John, good to see you. Today we are talking solo after 50, navigating a gray divorce. One quarter of people getting divorced now are over 50. In fact, the divorce rate among people 50 plus doubled between 1990 and 2010. And listen to this, after a gray divorce, women experience a 45% drop in their standard of living, men a 21% reduction. When we were talking about those numbers, you said you weren't that surprised because this is such a difficult period that you've had a lot of experience dealing with.
It is. It's an emotional time for
Yeah.
everybody. Emotions are running high. Everybody's trying to kind of look out for their own interest. It's just there's a lot of emotion that goes into it. We've seen some interesting cases along the way on this. It's important to have someone who's maybe a little calm and kind of bring a little clarity to some of this stuff. But a good example is I came across a lady years ago who the husband left and just left her in the house after 2008. And she had to try to figure out where all the finances were and whatnot. And
Oh,
he left to a
wow.
state that made it hard to get to some of those assets. So I would say one of the rules of lessons here that I learned was everybody needs to kind of have understanding where the assets are along the way.
Hmm.
One of the other interesting cases that we had in the past is that the spouse wanted the house so badly that that was one of her main inheritances, or I'm sorry, one of her main assets that she took. And the challenge is when there was a roof or things of that nature, she didn't necessarily have the means to be able to replace the roof or whatnot
Mm-hmm.
because she gave up some of the cash assets in favor of going for the house. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's all those little nuances that come into play.
Yeah, those are really important considerations. I'm glad you brought those up. So now let's sort through a few other key issues as you're planning your new future. And the first one would be to revisit your estate plan. Why is that?
It's very important to review any of those type of documents. You got to review your beneficiaries. A lot of times once that divorce is final, most people don't want their retirement asset to go to their divorced spouse.
Right.
They'd want to go to their children or maybe their brother or sister or whatever, whoever that may be. And then the other factor comes in is if you get remarried down the road. Also, you just want to make sure you double check like your medical power of attorneys. I would say most people wouldn't want their ex-spouse to necessarily handle their medical decisions, although I've seen that happen.
Hmm.
So it's just one of those things where it's got to be tailored right for you, and you just want to make
Hmm.
sure you get your ducks in a row.
Hmm. Right. Also, you need to examine your retirement and pension plans.
Certainly, not all pension and retirement plans are created equal. And so, for instance, if someone is a teacher, when they're balancing Social Security and their pension, there's what's called a windfall provision that they have to be worried about. Versus if someone had a private pension, they don't have to worry about that as much. And so it's just important to line up those items and understand, which assets could help each spouse, and ideally they're working together to get this set up in such a way where both people win and everybody can move on with their life and kind of go from there.
You hope so, yeah. Speaking of income streams, it's important to figure out how your Social Security benefits are going to be affected.
It will, and I just talked about that windfall
Hmm.
provision for Social Security, where if you're a teacher, um, you don't necessarily get your whole Social Security and your pension, and so when you're trying to figure out what your future retirement looks like as you're making these decisions on which assets maybe you want versus your spouse, you really want to have an advocate and just somebody who can kind of walk you through the pros and cons of doing one or the other in your particular situation, which is really the main thing to focus on.
Hmm. And also, you need to take a closer look at health and life insurance.
Yeah, and I think the big one here is the health insurance. And again, that same circumstance, if your spouse is a teacher or maybe working in the medical field, they have fantastic health
Right.
insurance. But if you're getting divorced at 50 and you have high blood pressure or maybe diabetes, and now you have to go get health insurance on your own, that is going to be a little bit of a task, and it's not going to be cheap. So all those factors need to be really considered as you kind of go through that process. And obviously, you always want to include an attorney with you as you're going through this.
Right. I'm glad you bring that up because, of course, not only is this such an emotional, hurdle, but it's also really important to surround yourself with friends and advocates. And one of those people should be a financial advisor. Why is that?
Just simply put, they can help put in context some of the different items that come into play. and it's not always what looks good right today. But if you're age 50, 45, we can kind of open that vision a little bit to see, well, when you're 65 and you're 70, how does that look based on the decision you're making today? And so you just want to make sure you have everything in front of you and make the best decision possible in a tough situation.
The more advocates, the better. Absolutely. John, if somebody has questions, if they're going through a divorce or maybe they have a friend who they know is, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, obviously give us a call here at the office, 440-471-4300. And if you want to look us up, we're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, but also we have our website, clarkwealthadvisor.com. And we'll just work with you as best we can. And, there's not always the right decision right away. A lot of times it takes a lot of reflecting and understanding of the situation that you're in. And, ultimately you just want to have an advocate for you who can help give you perspective on each of these situations.
Absolutely. Well said. All right, John, thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.